Hi.
Hi.
Um, Congratulations on how well your congressional campaign went. That is amazing.
Thank you.
Um,
Very proud
yeah.
of
So walk me through how you got here. What led you to get that far in the congressional campaign and then think, yeah, I should run for Senate?
it. So, I mean, we go all the way back, right? I've been a public school teacher 13 years. I've been in school leadership at a Title I middle school the last three. You know, about 4 or 5 years back, I entered and started a race actually for this seat for U.S. Senate. Had no idea what I was doing, right? Building a campaign out of my garage. It was in a time when all of your Dem groups across the state were meeting on Zoom, so I could be on like split screens in Pensacola and Miami at the same time, right? Getting to know people. Then things started opening up, started driving across the state, made a lot of great connections, raised a tiny bit of money, but it was really a learning curve. It was learning as I went, all the things that you need to do to build a successful campaign. So, last fall when this seat opened up, it was one that I was looking at because, from my position in the school, I mean, the impact of losing that Title I money, if they were able to eliminate the federal Department of Education, is it just detrimental. It's endgame for us. And I felt that that was an important enough message that we needed to get out and message. And I felt that it wasn't partisan and you could take it into a red district and go far with it. And so, I entered that race, but I knew what I needed in order to compete. And, we started off by building a very strong fundraising infrastructure that only grew. We bought tons of data and we continued to scale up. It's people seem to think that like they're waiting to see if our fundraising magic can repeat, like it's this random fluke and like the money god shined on us, and they did, don't get me wrong, but it's a massive system. We we burned through so many laptops, like on Excel files, like downloading donor data and just destroying the operating system of an Excel file because there's so much in there. Like you have to build a really massive infrastructure in order to be able to handle that much data, to engage and interact. Everything we did was very intentional, and we built it that way, and it allowed us to build the largest congressional campaign in the history of the state. We raised over $15 million in 4 months, which allowed us to knock on over 500,000 doors, to organize for more than 4 million phone calls into district and drive out voters for an April 1st election. You know, it's it it's a little bit of magic, but really it's a lot of intentional, deliberate actions and system building. So it's part of why we feel so confident that we're going to be able to raise the money we need in this race. So why enter this race afterwards? Well, we built an incredible fundraising machine. We have the ability to raise, I believe, what this race needs, which is, I see this and my team, we've mapped it out as $100 million campaign, right? In order to get done what we want to get done, we're going to need at least $10 million to pour into voter registration across the state, right? The purges that are happening are getting worse and worse. Last month in Miami, 170,000 voters purged from the rolls in one night. 11% of total voters purged in one night. We have to be able to, ensure that there is still an electorate. We have to be out there engaging and activating voters and getting them back on the roll so they can be there for us next November. And that's, again, these things aren't free. We have 10 counties that don't have local Democratic parties right now. In order to, we can't concede any ground, right? One of the biggest issues I think with our statewide Democratic candidates over the last 10, 20 years has been how much ground has been conceded. Looking at the maps that the Republicans draw and saying, well, like these areas are too red, we can't win there. But we have to. We have to not win, but we have to push them in. We have to average 40% of the vote across red Florida. parts of that have just been conceded. And most of the time they wind up being these default 65-35s. But if we go in there and we bring our message to the voters, I mean, look, District 6 was one of those. And we pushed it from a 32 to a 14. If we can push in these districts and get them to, average 40% across the board, the math works. We take back the state. So we've got a lot of work to do, going out and meeting people where they are, engaging, building. We're going to need a massive field program, right? If we knocked on 500,000 doors to get those results in one congressional district, going across all 28, we're going to have to hit 14 million doors to produce that turnout. So, it's a lot of money to do the job. And I think we can raise the money, and I think we can do the job. So we're very excited to get this started and get to work.
What do you say from people out of state who are like, oh, Florida, I'm not donating to Florida again? What do you say to get them to realize that it's not a lost cause, as you're saying, and that you really do have the ability to win there?
Yeah. No, so two things. So, right. So the first thing that I would say is look back. Look at what we just did in District 6. This is an area that everyone said, right, you can't win, you can't raise money in. We raise more money than anyone else, right? No one wants to hear NPAs won't vote for you. They vote 3-1 for Republicans. Well, in exit polls, we finished with 80% of the NPAs, right? It, you can't gain traction in these areas. We gained tons of traction, right? We scared the crap out of them, and they had to disrupt the schedule of the president of the United States 3 times in the last 5 days to message into district and get people out to vote. Okay. So we took a place that was completely written off, and we showed that if you invest in it and go out and meet the voters where they are, that it's live. And now, look, it's as simple as saying, oh, we just do it 28 times bigger. Like, huh. But that's what it is in a sense,
Right.
right? Can we scale it up? And I believe we can, right? So yes, we need donors. We need people to contribute to fund this because we've got a lot of work to do. We've got to hire a lot of people, right? We went from having organizers overseeing 6 counties to needing organizers overseeing 67 counties. It's
Right.
going to be a lot more bodies. It's going to be a lot more salaries. If you want to look ahead, what's the benefit for you? Well, look, we all know what Florida is, right? Like I get it. Florida man's real. I've met him many, many times, right? Yes. But we're talking about Florida being in play in 2028, okay? And Mega can lose Wisconsin, right? They can lose Michigan. They could lose Georgia. They can lose North Carolina or Virginia, right? Like these losses are setbacks. If you lose Florida, Mega is dead. We can draw the line in the sand here. This is the fight. And if we win it, you're done.
So you mentioned that there are some counties without Democratic parties or Democratic infrastructure. What are you doing to combat that? 10 of them?
10 of them. It's the most I can
Jesus!
ever remember. Yes. 15% of, wait, 1 out of 6.7. Yeah, 15% of
Math
15%
guy.
of our counties. Math guy, math teacher. Um, so because we just came off a campaign, right, where we had huge statewide and national support and volunteers, right? We had volunteers from all 67 counties in Florida. We had volunteers from all 50 states, people signing up to do phone banking, to do postcarding, people who were traveling to come canvass and knock doors for us. We have an incredible volunteer base all across the state. So we have a great list of people who are already engaged and want to be doing something that we can start from. So as we travel and as we meet with people in every district, we're going to be organizing, right? We're going to be getting people involved. The very first thing that we need everyone to do, the easiest thing is VBM. We need to get people signed up for vote by mail. Vote by mail registration has statewide a 95% voter turnout. If the ballot shows up at your house, you are more likely to vote than any other way. So we need to get as many people as possible if we want to increase voter turnout for the November election, because these things also get dropped every year. The state does a statewide purge. Everyone is off VBM after a November election, and you have to rebuild it every 2 years. So we did a lot of rebuilding in 6 counties during our election, but we need to do that all across the state, right? So we have tasks that can be accomplished, right? We have work that people can start doing right now to help go out and engage with their neighbors, to find and meet other Dems around them. The redder the district, the more important this engagement is, right? We saw this in District 6. People, Democrats and people who are not Trump supporters feel alone. They feel isolated, right? They feel like they're the only person in their town who is that way because the Trump supporters are so loud, right? With the flags and the gear and the hats and all the stuff, right? It feels like they're surrounded. And they need to know that they're not alone. They need to know that there are other people and that those people are taking action and that they can take action as well to help move us beyond this time in history to a better place. Um, so we have work to do and we're going to get started with it. And we have a great list of people who wanted to volunteer on our last campaign when it wasn't in their county. And now we're coming to their county and we're going to reach out to them and get them involved from the very beginning.
Now you get to say we you loved us then. Now you get to vote for us this time.
Now you get to vote for us this time.
So moving on to the Senate itself, what who are some of your favorite current senators to so that people can get a feel of what where you would be seating yourself, whatever I mean.
So there are some that I love, right? Obviously, um, you know, I love Bernie Sanders. I am still honored to have received his endorsement in the last campaign. Um, I'm a big fan of Elizabeth Warren, the work that she's done. Um, you know, really in this race, John Ossoff is just a model in terms of perseverance and getting work done. I mean, and when we look at similarities, I mean, the path that I'm trying to follow now, John Ossoff's first campaign was a congressional special election that he moved the needle in and pushed it farther than anyone thought, but wasn't able to cross the finish line. And he followed it up with a run for U.S. Senate in a state where no one thought that a Democrat could win. And he took him down to the end, engaged the entire state, got national support, and ultimately flipped Georgia blue. And it is the absolute blueprint in terms of work of what we're trying to do here. So, we have some great people in the U.S. Senate from our party, but we need more.
Yeah,
We
we
don't have
do.
enough.
And you guys are also
50, preferably 60, but I
you
could
guys
live
are
with 50,
also
right?
similar in age too, so there's that connection as
He's
well.
actually like 3 years younger than me.
Right. And you'll be one of the youngest. We have a pretty old electorate, so it'd be really great to have someone like
And
you.
that's the other thing. Yes, a very, of the similar age range, similar generation. So
So, as you know, of course, the budget bill is going through the Senate. So, if you were in the Senate right now, how would you be handling the budget bill? What would you be talking about on social media? How would you be discussing it? What would you be doing in regards to getting people to realize they need to contact their Republican representatives and vote against it?
Um, so a couple things, right? And I've called this out and I've said it before. I said it was something that as an elected as a U.S. representative, we'd won our previous race, I'd be doing. And it's what I feel that we need more of our senators doing. We do see some of them doing it. Chris Murphy is a great example. Bernie Sanders is probably the number one example of it right now. But you need to take the show on the road, right? You can't, especially since the majority of our Dem electeds are in safe blue areas, right? Just staying back in your zone where everybody gets it and talking to them doesn't make change. You have to get out into the areas where people are being harmed by their senator, right? And carry the message to them, right? We need to go to Kansas where agriculture is being decimated by the policies of this administration and lay out line by line why you need your senator from Kansas, why you need them to push back against this and to not support it or make changes before it goes through. Going out to where our veterans are. And, our veterans are already pissed off about what's happening in the VA. They felt the most immediate impact. But we need more electeds on the road carrying the message into areas where people can hear it and letting them know what's possible, right? This is what we can do with this. We can ensure, right? The new director of Social Security asked for less money than anyone's asked for that department in 30 years, right? Well, look, the amount of money requested is rarely the amount of money given. Usually it's the other way. Usually the director asks for more and Congress comes back with like, you can get by with a little less, you'll be okay, right? He's asking for less. You guys can very easily say no. We know what appropriate levels of funding are. We've seen what it should be. We're going to fund it at what it was last year, and we're going to allocate all of that money for specific positions that you are required to spend it on in the next fiscal year, right? So there are things that you can do to protect Social Security right now. There are things that you can do to protect funding for the VA. There are things that you can do to protect Medicaid and Medicare. There are things that you can do to protect Americans across this country who are about to be gravely harmed by this budget bill, right? And we need to get out to those people who are going to be harmed and don't understand why and let them know and put the pressure on the people that they've elected to represent them, especially if that Republican senator is up for re-election in 2026.
And there are a lot of them that are, and a lot of them that are
There are a
doing
lot
really
of them that are.
stupid things, like Joni Ernst.
Like Joni Ernst. Like
What do you
Joni
have to say to
Ernst.
her? What would you say if
So Joni Ernst won re-election 6 years ago, obviously in 2020, in what is probably, I mean, I followed that race so closely, and after she was, I mean, brutalized by Teresa Greenfield in their debate, um, like it was practically a hate crime the way she got dragged in that debate. I have never seen an elected official look so resigned with their upcoming defeat. She was beside herself in the days leading up to the election. She looked completely lost. And I've seen that a couple times. Like we've seen that with people who know, like, man, it's over. I have no path to victory. But she actually which is the craziest thing. So, I mean, this is someone who has truly had the fear of God of this state rejecting her the last time she had to go up. And now it's even more tense times. And she's managed to lay low and stay out of the news for 5 years. And she kicks open her media campaign with, well, hell, like everyone's going to die eventually. Why not just kill some people that, like, Iowa, Iowa, we're gonna support your candidates, right? We're gonna find you. We're gonna help find you a good one, and we'll be there. We're gonna make sure Iowa gets some support. I'll make a trip out to Iowa next year, absolutely, to carry that message and stump for their nominee. We've got a real chance to end Joni Ernst's career, and I think she kind of knows it already.
Yeah, it seems like she might. So you kind of already answered this, but just to go a little more into it, obviously you know that folks on the left really want to see fight from their senators. And a lot of them think they're not seeing it enough from some senators or seeing it enough from some senators. How would you fight? Other than obviously what you said of going to different states, what would you do to fight back that could really be seen by your future electorate?
Well, I said this on election night on April 1st. I'm not a big fan of moral victories, right? I mean, I'm very proud of the work we did and the results we got. I see the ability to take those results and replicate them across the state in with an electorate that is within the margins that would carry. Um, but what we did was not a victory, and grandstanding or whether it's long speeches on the floor or long speeches online or, feigned outrage on social media or whatever, doesn't change anything. It's not a victory. It's not a victory until you cut something from the bill, right? It's not a victory until you get them to preserve the spending for Social Security, until you ensure that veterans are not going to lose access to their health care. It's not a victory until you get something in return. And we can't be the celebration of moral victories and what was accomplished, for the career trajectory of an elected when people out here are still suffering is unacceptable to me. We need to be out there and fighting, use your platform, get on TV, you know, do the traveling, go to other states, message outside your electorate, and help put pressure on the electeds, right? We know that they're not going for everything, right? The Republicans in the Senate, they have the numbers, but they're not going for everything. We see, they're struggling to balance the number of people who want to oppose passage on these things with just enough to still clear them. They're struggling hard right now. And there's a reason why they're not calling a vote on dismantling the Department of Education, because they don't have the numbers. They don't have the numbers. That means that internally, right, they are fractured, and there are people that are scared of what's going to happen if they gut public schools. Okay, we need to put pressure on them and instill that fear in every area, in immigration, in labor, right, in social security, in healthcare, in our Veterans Administration. We need to over and over again ensure that there is that same level of fear that keeps them from signing on and supporting these horrible bills and horrible spending.
How would you put that pressure on? Is it just going to their states, or are there other ways that you would consider?
I think pushing in with their electorate is the best way, especially if they're up for reelection in 2026, right? I mean, a senator that just got in and has 5.5 more years is not going to be as scared or motivated as say a Joni Ernst, right? Who already thinks she's in trouble and is making things worse and is up for reelection and doesn't want to lose her job, right? Susan Collins in Maine, right? Like they're already feeling the heat. Go out there and turn it up. Go out there and turn it up. Bring their voters out. Go to their, appeal to their voters and get that. Let them see that, like, man, they are in trouble. They are in trouble, right? Because one of the ways too that we change hearts and minds is by going out there in person, right? Is by actually making it real. Because you can message and say things about us on the internet and on TV all you want, right? And for someone who's never met us or isn't familiar, those of us in the party or those of us doing work, right? Sure, it might be believable. It's the same thing that we see when they talk about immigrants, when they talk about trans people, when they talk about whoever, right? The less likely you are to know someone like that, the more likely you are to believe it. But once they know someone, it doesn't work anymore. Once they know you in person, once you've been out there and made yourself real to them and not just a character they see on TV and Facebook, right? Then the lies don't work. And we have to go out there and do that. If no Dems are getting elected in Florida, if no Dems are getting elected in Iowa, if no Dems are getting elected, right, then we need to go out there and make it real for those people, because no one is able to carry that message. Just similarly in District 6.
Yeah. And in your state, I mean, we're already seeing it, but how is your campaign going to be different, being that you're not running in a red district anymore? You're running in a state that could end up being blue at some point. How are the values
It's going to be blue when we're done with it.
I hope so. How are the values you're sharing in the state at large going to be different than the ones, not values, but how are the policies different?
Message is going to be the same, what we just carried in District 6, right? We finished with 98% of the Dem vote, 80% of the independent MPA vote, and 15% of the Republican vote. Those numbers carry with this electorate statewide. So that message so one of the funniest things, right? Because we stuck to a very hard economic message and we talked about solving problems that people were struggling with now, problems that were real for them in the moment. And one of kind of the funniest or favorite things was after we got the Bernie Sanders endorsement at the end, right? Because we talked to voters we talked to Republicans, we talked to Democrats, we talked to independents and MPAs, right? Was after that Bernie endorsement and having like Republicans come up to me and be like, I can't believe Bernie endorsed you. Like you're practically a Republican. Like you say all the same things that I believe in. Like, and then we'd have like moderate Dems or people being like, I can't believe Bernie endorsed you. Like you've been running such a moderate message. You're such a moderate with everything you're saying. And progressives will come up and be like, I'm so glad. I can't believe Bernie endorsed you. Like, that's amazing to get a progressive in a race like this who's like, because we weren't getting into the weeds with all the divisive things, right? With whatever Fox News is talking about, they want to talk about some D3 trans tennis player, so that way people aren't looking at, a million veterans having their doctor's appointments pushed back 6 months. Like there are, right? That stuff is a distraction and it's divisive. We stuck to our message and everyone felt like it was their message. Everyone felt like it was what they needed and took ownership of it. Like we were their campaign. And if we can do that in a district as red as 6, we can do that across this entire state.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it was incredible watching your campaign, and it's gonna be incredible watching this coming campaign. I know that you did a event with David Jolly. Are you guys gonna be campaigning
Like
together?
4. Um, Done a lot of events with David Jolly. I expect that with both of us running across the same state, that I'll be seeing a lot more of him over the next 17 months. He's an incredible candidate. He has a really great message that I think is really relevant in this moment. I'd recommend anyone, if they haven't heard him speak yet, either go out when he comes to your town or pull up some of it online. But I think that there's a really great potential ticket there between me and him, and I look forward to doing the work with him to turn this state blue over the next 17 months.
Are there any issues that you think aren't getting the attention that they deserve that you want people to be talking about more, or that you're going to be campaigning on, or you want people to be thinking about that might not have been getting the attention that they deserve?
I mean, number one for me is education. Education is why I came into this. I came into this thinking that, we'd be talking education all day long. And, then I went out across the district, across 6 counties, and met with an electorate that was 25% age 65 and above, 48% age 55 and above. And, public schools were important to them, but not as important as Social Security, as Medicaid and Medicare, as veterans benefits, as, doing something about housing and insurance. And, these are issues that seem to be impacting absolutely everyone. I would love to see education become a top line issue, and we can just go ham on that. Just go to town all day long on what we need to do to protect our students, to support our teachers, to fund our schools, and to improve education in every state across this country. Most importantly, Florida, which needs the most improvement because we're
Oh
like
yeah.
dead last in nearly every metric. We're first in school shootings, but we're last in like everything else, and that's not where you want those numbers to land. We need to do more, and I would love for that issue to catch fire and for us to be able to run with it over the next 18 months.
So you might have another policy issue that you weren't able to focus on in District 6.
Here's hoping.
What's giving you hope right now? I try and ask everyone that because I think that's really important.
What's giving me hope right now? I mean, Desmond Bain just got traded to the Orlando Magic. He gave up 3 really crappy draft picks and 1 good asset for a guy who's a career 20 points a game scorer, 40% from 3 point, and fits a need that we have on the team. So that makes me very happy, especially in a weakened Eastern Conference. It's hard to find some silver linings, but it's a lot easier when you're doing the work. And what I tell people is, it's not hopeless. We have a path to victory, and there's work that needs to be done. And it feels like you're a lot closer to it, and like it feels a lot easier to live in this world when you know that you're making impact and change. So please, right? Go online, joshweil.us. You can sign up to make contributions. You can sign up to volunteer to get on our list. You can find out about our event schedule and come out to when we're in your town or county, no matter how big or small it is. Get involved, right? Getting out there, meeting with people, doing the work that is going to translate to victory next November is the best thing that you can do for your mental health right now. Trust me, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting for me these days.
Yeah. One quick thing. Since you were a teacher, if your students were the Republicans in Congress, how would you be talking to them right now if they were doing this in class?
Well, I've said this a lot. I think it's why we need more teachers in politics, right? Because, our job is to message in ways people understand, right? If I can get 12-year-olds to understand climate change, I can get most Republicans to understand climate change, right? And that is, I think that's an important distinction. Katie Porter was the best example, right? There was no one confused by what was going on Katie Porter's whiteboard. She made it clear as day for everyone, right? Teachers know how to communicate, especially good teachers, right? Because good teachers, right, if students don't do well on something, we don't say, well, I taught it, right? It's our job not to teach it. It's our job to make sure you learn it. And if it doesn't work the first time, we find a second time, we find a third time, we find ways to communicate and help you understand. So that way the message gets through. And we need more teachers in politics.
We do. Well, thank you so much, Josh Weil. I hope I can call you Senator Weil soon. And yeah, congratulations on the start of your campaign, and I can't wait to follow it through.
Fantastic. Appreciate all your support. Thank you.
Thanks so much.